everybody. This is kind of uncanny. I want to thank Sarah for setting up my story. My story also takes place in Costa Rica, in Montezuma. Given the fact that I'm old enough to be Sarah's mother, you know that this takes place decades ago. So my husband and I were Peace Corps volunteers in Costa Rica, and we were at the end of our in-country training. We had been learning Spanish and learning agricultural techniques, and we were about to be assigned to work with some indigenous people in the jungles of Costa Rica, when we were tasked with our entire group. Anyway, we were married couples who were going to be working down there for a couple of years. We were told, take a 4-day weekend, use your best Spanish, your best orienteering skills, go someplace obscure, and get back here by Monday morning and have a report ready. So each couple had to pick a really odd place to get to. Dean and I, my husband, chose this town called Tambor, which was on the Nicoyan Peninsula, which required us to take a really rustic train, if you could even call it that, to this town called Punta Arenas, wait for a ferry, cross the Nicoyan Gulf, and trek on down to this little town on the coast. So we missed the first boat after we arrived in Punta Arenas, had to wait about 6 hours for the next ferry, which turned out to be very unferry-like. This boat was maybe 25 feet long, heavily laden with bananas and roosters, and probably 50 people when the capacity should have been maybe 15. And you know, we were on this boat where you could just stroke the water with your hands. You were so sunk, far down into the water. Anyway, while we're doing our crossing, I locked eyes with this Anglo-looking woman, and I felt like this sense of relief, like, oh my God, somebody I can speak English with, And we started to talk. She asked what we were up to, and I explained to her we were going to Tambor. And she says, you don't want to go to Tambor. And she said, there'll be too many people there. You should go to this town called Montezuma. And so we said, well, we're not sure. We don't know anybody in Montezuma. We don't know where we'll stay. And, we're supposed to be doing this cross-cultural kind of thing. She said, trust me, I know a woman there who will give you accommodation. I think you should do this. So we said, what the heck? So we got off of the ferry at the end point, and there was this little microbus, they call it. It's a little minivan. And again, it should have carried maybe 10 people, so at least 45 pile into it. So we take off down these roads that are unpaved, rocky, and we should have all been wearing hard hats for all the bumps that we encountered. So we make it to the end of the road, and we find that we're in this little town called Cobano, and we find that we're about another maybe 10 kilometers from where Montezuma is. So thank goodness we have this woman who has kind of taken us under her wing, and she assures us that she has a way to get us to Montezuma from this little place called Cobano. Out of nowhere appears this Toyota truck, and she introduces us to the driver, whose name is Guillermo, and she says, pile into the truck. My husband Dean was in the back with this other gentleman from the bus who happened to be the mayor of Montezuma, we found out. So we pile into the truck, and Guillermo is driving, I'm in the middle, and this woman who has befriended us, her name was Karen. She was from Denmark, by the way, had lived in Montezuma for about 25, 30 years. Anyway, so she's sitting by the window, and Guillermo has an 8-track player in this truck, and he pops in an 8-track, and he tells me that this is his favorite song, that it's written by or sung by a woman with the most beautiful voice, and that he just envisions her to be the most lovely thing he's ever seen on earth just by the sound of her voice. And as the music starts playing, I realize that it's Michael Jackson singing the theme song from the movie Ben. And Guillermo says, tell me about this young woman singing this song. So I'm remembering the words of our trainers back at Peace Corps camp saying, now remember, you're here on a State Department passport. You're representatives of the United States. Don't screw up. So I'm thinking, how do I tell this wonderful man that, and here I am an American, I'm here to teach you a thing or two, Peace Corps volunteer, that this is a song not by a young woman, but it's this little guy, and it's, this movie about the animal, I deferred to my new friend, Doña Karen, to try to explain that since her Spanish was a little more sophisticated than mine. So Guillermo is satisfied somewhat with the explanation, and he pops in the next tape, and it happens to be the music Funky Town. Do you remember that song from the 70s? And he turns to me and he says, "Donde está Funky Town?" So that was the next thing that we had to explain. But I'll fast forward to, we finally arrive in the town of Montezuma, which is very, very humble in the late 70s. And Doña Karen, of course, turns out that she's putting us up for the weekend. And she says, I've altered my diet a bit. I've always led a very natural type of existence. And I'm finding now that I'm modeling my dietary habits after the monkeys in the jungle. So I won't be able to prepare any food for you, so I'm going to ask you to contract with a woman in town to make tortillas for you for breakfast. Fine, whatever. So she encourages us to go down to this little soda cantina kind of little grocery store to get a few supplies. So we have a very comfortable night. The next morning, there's a knock at the door, and there's a little girl from the town with a bowl of freshly made tortillas for our breakfast. So I answered the door, and as soon as I did, this darling little girl takes the bowl of tortillas and thrusts them into my hands and runs away from me. So I wasn't really sure what to make of that. But later on, as I was trying to find her mother in the village so that I could pay her for making our tortillas for breakfast, I found that I had all these little kids kind of following me through town. I felt like a mother duckling almost. And when I found her mother finally explained to me that her little girl was shocked and said, "Mommy, there's a gringa at Doña Karen's house and she has blue eyes." She had never seen anyone with blue eyes. But I'll wrap it up by telling you the most significant thing that happened to us was after a torrential rainstorm, we had to go in search of some fresh water. And we were told to walk into the jungle to a house that never had a problem with contaminated water after a rainstorm. So as my husband and I are going through the jungle and we're hearing the monkeys and the raindrops falling, and just really getting into this beautiful experience, we're trudging along and I hear do 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 do. It's soft. Then it's getting louder. Do 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 do. And I'm thinking, are the 60s finally catching up with me somehow, But as we went further and further in, we hear the song of Charlie Brown, a Charlie Brown special or whatever. We encountered this little house in the jungle with this gray-blue glow emanating from it. And as we entered in, this was the little house that had the water supply, we see about 25 people huddled around a black and white TV that's hooked up to a car battery, and they're watching a Charlie Brown special. And we go into a little well room, and we were able to get some fresh water from the people who lived at this house. But anyway, that was our surreal experience into the wild.